I never thought love would find me in the middle of a Thursday night, sitting on the creaky couch of my tiny apartment in Portland. Life had been predictable for a while. Wake up, coffee, work at the design studio, gym, repeat. But there was something about that evening, something subtle in the air that made me feel electric that I was scrolling through my phone, half-heartedly checking social media, when a message popped up in a group chat from an old college friend. Hey, come to this rooftop bar tonight. You need a break from your own nonsense. I was about to ignore it, my introverted instincts screaming at me, but something stopped me. Maybe it was the monotony, maybe just curiosity. I texted back, sure, I'll swing by. The rooftop bar was packed, music thumping, laughter mixing with the crisp night air. I scanned the crowd, feeling awkward as usual, until my eyes landed on her. She was leaning against the railing, a drink in one hand, the other tucked casually in her leather jacket pocket. Her hair was a deep chestnut, catching the neon glow from the city lights. Her eyes, green, sharp, yet inviting, met mine, and for a moment, everything else blurred. Hey, I said, approaching, my voice betraying my nerves. Hey, she replied, that perfect mixture of warmth and mischief in her tone. You're new here? Sort of. Just visiting. I lied. Though my apartment was a few blocks away, we talked for hours, or maybe it was minutes. Time was tricky with her. She laughed at my terrible jokes, challenged my opinions on music and movies, and even made fun of my obsession with minimalist design. There was a spark undeniable and wild that I hadn't felt in years. It'd be why the end of the night, we were leaning against the edge of the rooftop, city lights sprawling beneath us. The kind of quiet moment that makes you feel both vulnerable and invincible. You know, she said, tracing the rim of her glass with her finger, I don't usually give my number out to strangers. Strangers? I raised an eyebrow. Feels like we've known each other forever. She smirked. Maybe that's a problem. I left the bar that night with a smile, a flutter in my chest, and her number saved under Dangerous Girl. Over the next few weeks, we texted constantly. Every message was a mix of flirtation, teasing, and subtle challenges. She was sharp, confident, and unapologetically herself. Everything I had avoided in relationships before. And yet, I was drawn in deeper every day. Our first date wasn't a fancy restaurant or some cliché spot. She picked a small, hidden coffee shop downtown, the kind with mismatched chairs and a resident cat that ignored everyone but her. We talked for hours, sharing stories, dreams, regrets, the kind of raw honesty that usually takes months to reach. And then, it happened. That first kiss, soft, hesitant at first, then burning with an intensity one didn't know I was capable of. The taste of coffee and something else, something uniquely her, mixed in the night air. It was the kind of moment you replay endlessly in your head, hoping it wasn't just a dream. But life, of course, never lets things stay simple. She had secrets, hints of a past that wasn't ready to be shared. And then there was me, too cautious, too stubborn, too scared of losing control. And so began the push and pull, the intoxicating dance of desire and mistrust, love and fear. I didn't know it yet, but meeting her would change everything. My routines, my walls, my understanding of intimacy and trust. She was going to make me fight for her, for us, in ways I never imagined. And I was ready, more than I had ever been. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. Portland felt different with her around. Brighter, sharper, somehow more dangerous. We spent late nights wandering through dimly lit streets, sharing food from hole-in-the-wall diners, stealing kisses under the neon signs of empty parking lots. Every moment with her was a mix of thrill and uncertainty. She introduced herself properly that week, Lena. Her laugh, a soft, teasing melody, was addictive. She had a way of making the mundane feel electric, of turning ordinary conversations into something charged. And she was complicated. I don't do relationships the normal way, she said one night, sitting on my couch, her knee brushing mine. I get bored. I get restless. I don't trust easily. I didn't flinch. Good. I like challenges. She smiled, a little dangerous, a little approving. And then she leaned in closer, and I knew I'd be testing that trust sooner than I imagined. Our first night together was electric, messy, intense. I had kissed girls before, had flings that meant something in the moment, but nothing prepared me for Lena. She moved with purpose, like she knew exactly what she wanted and wasn't afraid to take it. That night, the apartment felt smaller, the city beyond the window fading away, until it was just us, breathless, reckless, alive. But intensity has a price point. 2 weeks later, I met him, Tom. Tom was Lena's ex, though she never outright said it. I could see it in the way her eyes flickered whenever he was mentioned. Tom was charismatic, confident, the type of guy who could charm anyone in the room without trying. And suddenly, the ease between Lena and me shifted. "She's amazing," he said to me one evening when we all ended up at the same bar. "You're lucky to have her." "Yeah," I replied, keeping my tone casual. But inside, something tightened. "You should know," Tom added, leaning back with that effortless smirk, "she is a history. She's not exactly easy to keep." Lena shot him a glare, sharp and warning. But I noticed her fingers brush mine under the table, a silent reassurance. My heart raced, not just from desire, but from the unspoken tension that had entered our lives. After that night, everything changed. Every text, every call, every moment felt charged. Lena was still thrilling, still intoxicating, but now there was a shadow, a reminder that love, desire, and trust weren't uncomplicated. We argued more, fought more passionately, and yet the connection only grew stronger. Each disagreement ended in a storm of kisses and whispered apologies, the kind that left your skin tingling and your mind dizzy. I learned things about her, vulnerabilities she hid, fears she couldn't voice, and desires that scared her as much as they thrilled her. And in turn, she began to see parts of me I'd kept buried. Insecurities, obsessive tendencies, and that burning need to protect what I cared about. One night, after a particularly heated fight about trust, she slammed the door of my apartment and stormed out. I chased her, found her leaning against a cold brick wall in the alley, tears running silently down her cheeks. "I'm scared," she whispered. "I don't want to get hurt again." "I know," I said, cupping her face. "Neither do I. But that's the point. We risk it together, or we don't have anything." She looked at me for a long moment, vulnerability and defiance mingling in her gaze, and then she kissed me, deep, desperate, everything we had ever fought against all at once. That night, we didn't hold back. Every touch, every movement was raw, urgent, a way to remind ourselves that even amidst fear and doubt, the pull between us was irresistible. But even as we clung to each other, I could feel it, the tension of her past creeping in, the secrets she wouldn't share, and the constant shadow of Tom lingering somewhere in the background. Love wasn't simple with Lena. It never would be, and I was more than willing to fight for it, even if it meant losing myself along the way. The days that followed were a dangerous mix of passion and tension. Lena and I were inseparable one moment, fighting the next. Every text from her seemed loaded with double meanings. Every glance from someone else could ignite jealousy in me. And then there was Tom, the ghost I couldn't shake. One Friday night, she invited me to a gallery opening downtown. The kind of upscale event I normally wouldn't attend, but for her, I went. She looked stunning. Tight black dress, heels that made her legs look endless, and that mischievous smile that could melt walls. Throughout the evening, I tried to ignore the way her old friends, and especially Tom, lingered near her. I hated the subtle looks he threw my way, the silent challenge in his smirk. Lena, oblivious or daring, leaned closer to me during conversations, brushing my arm, whispering jokes only I could hear. The friction between us was electric. Later, back in my apartment, the tension finally broke. She pushed me against the door, lips pressing hard against mine, hands tangled in my hair. "You've been thinking about him, haven't you?" she murmured, voice husky, teasing. "Maybe a little," I admitted, my pulse racing. "But I can't stop thinking about you either." Her laugh was low and sultry. "Good, because I need to see how much you want me." That night was different from before. There was no hesitance, no quiet teasing. Every kiss, every touch was urgent, demanding, testing the limits of desire and control. She led me to the bedroom, like she was guiding a storm, and I followed without hesitation. Clothes fell, bodies intertwined, moans filling the room, the city lights outside our window casting shadows over the chaos. Her hands explored me with a confidence I had never experienced, and I did the same to her. Every moment was intense, a battle of control and surrender, trust and temptation. By the end, we were both exhausted and trembling, hearts pounding in sync. But it wasn't just lust, it was something deeper, something dangerous and addictive. The morning after, reality crept back. She was quiet, distant, and I could tell her mind was elsewhere. "I'm not good at this," she admitted softly, avoiding my gaze. "I don't do normal. I don't belong fully." "Neither do I said. "But I want this. I want you." She smiled, but it was fragile. "You always want what you can't have, huh?" Our dynamic shifted after that night. The sex remained intense, but so did the push and pull. Arguments sparked over trivial things. Insecurities bled into our conversations, and I found myself constantly aware of Tom's shadow. Point one evening. Lena disappeared for hours, leaving a cryptic text. "Need some air. Don't wait up." My worry turned to rage when she returned with a faint smell of another man's cologne. She shrugged it off, laughing nervously. "You're imagining things." I wasn't. I could feel it, the tension, the threat to what we had. I wanted to trust her completely, but the jealousy gnawed at me. And yet, every night, we found each other again, pulling closer, touching harder, making love like the world outside didn't exist. It was a cycle of passion and conflict, desire and insecurity. I didn't know how long we could keep it up without falling apart completely. But one thing was certain. I couldn't let her go. And Lena, she couldn't let me go either. It was a rainy Thursday when everything began to unravel. I was waiting for Lena at her usual cafe, staring out at the slick streets, when my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "You don't know the whole story. Be careful." My stomach twisted. Lena arrived moments later, drenched from the rain, hair sticking to her face, eyes bright and stormy. "Hey," she said softly, brushing past me. "Sorry I'm late." "Who's that?" I asked, showing her the message. Her eyes flickered, and for a split second, I saw hesitation, fear, maybe even guilt. "It's nothing. Just someone trying to stir trouble." But I couldn't shake it. Her past was catching up with us, the secrets she carried threatening to pull us apart. That night, at my apartment, the tension was unbearable. We didn't argue. There was no need. The air was thick, heavy with unspoken questions, jealousy, and desire. Lena approached me slowly, hands trembling slightly as they brushed against my chest. "You want me, don't you?" she whispered, voice low, almost a challenge. More than anything, I admitted, catching her wrist and pulling her close. What followed was a storm of desire. It wasn't gentle, it wasn't patient. She pressed herself against me, hands roaming, lips demanding. Every touch, every gasp, was amplified by the tension simmering between us. Fear of losing each other, fear of what secrets might come to light. Clothes fell in a frenzy, our bodies clashing with raw intensity, voices mingling with the rain tapping on the windows. She moved with a fire I had never experienced, teasing and testing my limits, daring me to surrender fully. And I did, completely. Every moment was a declaration of need, of trust, of passion. By the time we collapsed together, our hearts pounding, the storm outside mirrored the storm we had created. But morning brought clarity and complication. She confessed then, reluctantly, her voice shaky. "There's more you need to know. Tom, he wasn't just an ex. He's connected to things I can't explain yet. Dangerous things." I felt my stomach drop. "What do you mean?" "Business I shouldn't have been involved in. I thought it was over. I thought he was gone. But he's back, and I don't want him to hurt you. Or me." I stared at her, realizing the stakes were higher than I imagined. Lena was a storm wrapped in vulnerability, a force I couldn't control, but couldn't let go of. And now, the danger wasn't just emotional. It was real, tangible, a threat that could shatter everything we had built. Yet despite the fear, despite the uncertainty, we clung to each other. That night, our intimacy was desperate, a mixture of longing, reassurance, and raw need. Every kiss, every touch was both a comfort and a reminder of the chaos we faced. "I don't want to lose you," I whispered into her hair, holding her close. "You won't," she replied, voice trembling. "Not if we survive this." And in that moment, amidst the shadows of past mistakes, looming threats, and unspoken secrets, I realized that love, real, burning, dangerous love, was worth every risk. The next few days were a whirlwind. Lena and I tried to act normal, meeting at our usual spots, laughing, pretending the threat of Tom didn't hang over us like a dark cloud. But every glance over her shoulder, every whispered phone call, made my stomach tighten. One night, she invited me to her apartment. The city lights spilled through the windows, painting her living room in warm hues. She was tense, pacing, biting her lip, eyes darting toward the door. "What's going on?" I asked, stepping closer. Tom's name escaped her in a whisper. "He's here. He knows I'm seeing you. He's watching." My pulse quickened. Rage, fear, and desire mixed into a combustible storm. I wanted to protect her, to shield her, to show her that no one could touch what we had. Then she pressed herself against me. "I need you," she said, voice raw, trembling with fear and longing. That night, we didn't just make love, we collided. Every touch was urgent, desperate, charged with the tension of looming danger. Her hands gripped me like she feared I might vanish, my lips devouring hers, as if that could keep the world at bay. Moans and whispered names mingled with the distant hum of the city, every movement a declaration. We belonged to each other, no matter the chaos outside. Afterward, wrapped in each other's arms, she finally shared more of her secret. Tom wasn't just a possessive ex. He was involved in something illegal, dangerous enough to put anyone close to him at risk. Lena had tried to leave, tried to escape, but it seemed the past had a way of following her. "I wanted to tell you," she said softly, tracing circles on my chest. "But I was scared. Scared you'd leave." I kissed her forehead. "I'm not going anywhere. We face it together." But facing it wasn't simple. Over the next few days, Tom's presence grew more overt. I saw him at bars, at streets we walked down, even in places Lena claimed were safe. Arguments erupted between us, fueled by jealousy and fear. And yet, the intimacy between us deepened. Our passion a bomb and a battle all at once. One night, after a particularly tense confrontation with Tom outside a cafe, Lena and I returned to my apartment. She fell onto the bed, exhausted and trembling. I followed, holding her close, feeling the need to assert that I was here, that I was hers. "Do you trust me?" I asked, voice low, brushing hair from her face. "Completely," she whispered. The intensity of that night went beyond anything we had shared. It wasn't just desire, it was protection claiming reassurance. Every kiss, every movement was a promise. No one will take us apart. By morning, we lay entwined, bodies slick with sweat, hearts racing, minds intertwined. Outside, the city moved on, oblivious to the storm we had weathered, the war we had started, and the passion that bound us. But deep down, I knew this was only the beginning. Tom was still out there, and Lena's secrets were only partially revealed. The next steps would test everything: our trust, our passion, and our very survival. And I was ready to face it all. For her, I would walk through fired. It was a Saturday evening when everything came to a head. Lena had insisted we meet at a quiet bar on the edge of the city, a place she claimed Tom wouldn't find. I should have sensed the tension radiating off her, the way her fingers drummed nervously on the tabletop, her eyes scanning every entrance. "He's looking for you," she whispered as soon as I arrived, sliding into the booth across from me. "I don't know why, but he's relentless." I clenched my jaw. "Then we deal with him. Together." We left the bar, walking quickly through rain-slick streets, hearts racing. That's when we saw him. Tom, leaning casually against a lamppost, smirk plastered on his face like he owned the night. Lena froze, but I didn't. "Stay out of her life," I said, stepping in front of her. My hands were shaking, not from fear, but from a burning anger I couldn't contain. "Oh, I see," he replied, tilting his head. "You're the new boyfriend. Cute." His tone dripped mockery. "But you don't know what you're dealing with." Lena grabbed my arm, urging calm, but my body was alive with adrenaline. "We don't have to do this," she pleaded that I ignored her. "Step away. Now." Tom laughed, that confident, dangerous laugh. "Or what?" The tension exploded. Words turned into shoves, shoves into a fight, and suddenly I was face to face with a man who had haunted Lena's past. Every punch, every block, every dodge was a mix of rage, fear, and raw desperation. I couldn't let him intimidate her. Not now. Not ever. Eventually, the fight ended as abruptly as it started. Tom disappeared into the night, leaving behind a promise in his smirk. "This isn't over." We returned to my apartment, soaked and bruised, adrenaline still surging. Lena collapsed onto the bed, and I followed, pulling her close. "I'm sorry," she whispered, burying her face in my chest. "I should have told you everything earlier." "You did what you could," I said, kissing the top of her head. "We'll face it together. Always." That night, our intimacy became more than passion. It was a reaffirmation, a physical promise that no matter what dangers or secrets Tom brought, we belonged to each other. Every touch, every kiss, every whispered name was a vow. We survive together, we fight together, we love together. By morning, exhaustion and desire intertwined, leaving us wrapped around each other like lifelines. And while Tom's shadow still lingered, the connection between Lena and me had never been stronger. Our love forged in fire, danger, and raw, undeniable passion. Weeks passed after that night, but the tension never fully left us. Tom's presence loomed like a shadow over our lives, but Lena and I were determined to protect what we had. Every moment together became more precious, more urgent, as if we knew time could slip away at any second. One evening, Lena invited me to her apartment, her eyes serious. "I need to tell you everything," she said. "No more secrets." I nodded, taking her hands in mine. "I am listening." She breathed deeply and began, recounting the parts of her past she had hidden. Tom hadn't just been a possessive ex. He had been involved in dangerous dealings, things that could ruin lives. She had tried to escape, but circumstances had tied her to him longer than she had wanted. And now, he had resurfaced, threatening not just her, but anyone close to her. "I wanted to protect you," she whispered, tears glistening in her eyes. "I didn't want to drag you into my mess." "You're already part of my life," I said firmly. "Whatever comes, we face it together. No lies, no hiding." That night, we made love not just with desire, but with understanding. Every touch, every kiss, every whisper became a reaffirmation of trust. It was intimate, vulnerable, and raw, an expression of love that was deeper than passion alone. We explored each other with patience and tenderness, intertwining desire with emotional connection, building something stronger than any external threat. Over the following days, Lena and I devised a plan to deal with Tom. We confronted him together, finally forcing him to back off, not through violence, but by showing him that Lena had chosen her life, her love, and her future, and that I was part of that future. It was the turning point. Tom faded from our lives, leaving only memories and the faint sting of fear. Lena and I emerged from the storm stronger, closer, and more connected than ever. In the quiet mornings, wrapped in each other's arms, we finally allowed ourselves to breathe freely. Our intimacy became a reflection of our trust and love. No fear, no games, just pure connection. Every embrace, every kiss, every whispered word was a celebration of what we had survived together. Lena smiled one morning, tracing my face with her fingertips. "We made it," she said softly. "Yes," I replied, holding her close. "We did, and we'll keep making it every day together." And for the first time in a long while, the city outside felt safe. The shadows faded, and love, raw, passionate, real, was all that mattered. Months passed. The chaos of the past, the fear, the secrets, the threats, had faded into memories, scars that reminded us of what we had survived. Lena and I settled into a rhythm of life that was ours alone, a blend of passion, trust, and quiet moments that made every day feel precious. That we moved into a small apartment downtown, the kind with big windows that caught the morning sun. On weekends, we wandered through farmers markets, shared coffee in tiny cafes, and sometimes just lay in bed, talking about dreams, fears, and the endless possibilities of the future. Our intimacy had evolved. The raw, desperate passion of the beginning had matured into something deeper, richer, a mix of desire, trust, and the comfort of knowing we were each other's home. Every touch, every kiss, every embrace became a reaffirmation. We are ours. Together. One evening, as the sun dipped below the skyline, Lena leaned against me on the balcony, her head resting on my shoulder. "Do you ever think about that first night we met?" she asked softly. "All the time," I admitted, wrapping my arm around her. "I never imagined it would lead us here." She smiled, a mix of mischief and love. "Neither did I, but I'm glad it did." I kissed the top of her head. "Me too. You've changed my life. Made it brighter, wilder, better." And then, almost impulsively, I pulled her closer, pressing my lips to hers. The kiss was soft at first, then deepened, a reminder of all the nights, the fights, the passion, the trust that had built between us. It was a kiss that said, "I'm yours." Always. Later, in the quiet of our apartment, I held her as she drifted to sleep. Her breathing even, her body warm against mine. I realized something profound. Love wasn't just desire or passion. It was protection, trust, and choosing each other every single day, despite the past, despite fear, despite everything. And I chose her. Always. As the city lights twinkled outside our window, I knew one thing for certain. We had survived storms, shadows, and secrets. And now, together, Lena and I could face anything, because we had each other forever. The rain that night had a rhythm, tapping against the windows like the pulse of the city itself. I couldn't sleep, lying awake beside Lena, listening to her soft breathing. The intimacy we shared had changed something fundamental inside me, made me braver, hungrier for life and for her. But shadows lingered. I remember my own past, flashes of teenage years spent in awkward rooms, learning how to protect myself, learning how to hide the hurt. My parents had divorced when I was 14. My father had left without explanation, and my mother had buried herself in work. I learned early that love was fragile, fleeting, and often painful. Lena, in her own way, had taught me that love could also be wild, consuming, and relentless. Her past was darker. She had grown up in a city 2 states away, moving constantly, learning to trust no one, to fight for every inch of autonomy. Tom had been a part of that life. First a friend, then a lover, then a dangerous presence she couldn't escape. She had survived it all, but the scars were there, quiet moments where she flinched at a loud noise, hesitation when someone got too close, fear in her eyes she tried to hide. And I reached for her hand in the dark, fingers intertwining. "Tell me again," I whispered, "all of it. Every piece of your past, you'll let me know." She stirred, opening her eyes, those green eyes glowing in the moonlight. "You really want to know? I want to know everything about you," I said. "The parts you keep hidden, the parts you think no one can understand. I want all of it, Lena." She hesitated, then began to speak. Stories of a life constantly on the move, of betrayal, heartbreak, survival. She told me about Tom's manipulations, how he had tried to control her, how she had finally escaped, but never fully. And then something broke inside her, and I held her close, letting her cry into my chest. That night, when tears finally ceased, our intimacy wasn't just physical, it was a merging of souls. Every touch carried understanding. Every kiss was a promise of safety. We moved together slowly, exploring each other with a mix of passion and tenderness, our bodies telling stories words couldn't. I traced the scars on her arms, and she traced the ones on my heart. The connection was electric, desperate, and yet comforting, a fusion of pain and desire. In the weeks that followed, our relationship deepened. We spent days exploring Portland, the hidden parks, the quiet streets of old neighborhoods, the tiny cafes where we could sit and talk for hours. We discovered each other in mundane moments, arguing over what kind of coffee was better, laughing at awkward street performers, sharing late-night pizzas on the couch. But Tom's shadow never fully disappeared. One evening, I found a note slipped under my apartment door. "You can't keep her from me forever." I showed it to Lena, and for the first time, fear flickered across her usually confident face. "We can't ignore him," she said quietly. "He's dangerous, and if he decides to act, I know," I replied, gripping her hand. "But we won't let him break us. Not ever." That night, our intimacy became a rebellion against fear. Every touch, every kiss, every whispered word was defiance, a declaration that nothing could take us apart. We were alive, and we were together, and that was more powerful than any shadow from the past. A month later, Lena and I were walking through the streets of downtown Portland, the neon signs reflecting in puddles from an earlier rain. We had settled into a rhythm, laughing, teasing, exploring the city together, but tension lingered beneath the surface. Tom's presence was still a ghost in our lives, and every unexpected sound or shadow made Lena tense. One night, Lena invited me to a gathering at a friend's apartment. Small, casual, music low, people laughing over drinks. It was the kind of event I normally wouldn't enjoy, but for her, I went. She introduced me to her friends, a mix of artists, writers, and musicians, and I felt myself slowly relaxing, enjoying the warmth of the room and the comfort of being with her. But then I saw him. Across the room, leaning casually against the wall, smirking with that familiar confidence, was Tom. He hadn't expected to see me here, and the surprise flashed across his face. Lena stiffened beside me. My pulse spiked, not with fear, but with an intense surge of protective anger. "Stay close," I murmured, gripping her hand. Throughout the evening, Tom's presence loomed like a storm cloud. He laughed with her friends, asked pointed questions, and occasionally let his gaze linger on Lena in a way that made my skin crawl. Lena, sensing my tension, leaned into me during conversations, brushing her hand against mine, grounding me. Later, when the party thinned out, Lena pulled me aside. "He's testing you," she whispered, eyes searching mine, trying to see if I still have any pull over him. I felt a surge of determination. "Then let him see this, what I feel for you, what we have." That night, our intimacy became a declaration. In the quiet of my apartment, the tension of the evening burned away in fire and need. Every kiss, every touch was a reaffirmation of our bond, a mix of raw passion and emotional depth. Lena's hands explored me as mine explored her, and for hours, we surrendered to each other completely, merging desire and trust in a way that left us both trembling and breathless. Over the following days, Lena and I strategized. Tom couldn't interfere without exposing himself, and we began to subtly reclaim our peace. We explored more of Portland together, hidden parks, quiet streets, late-night diners, and each day strengthened the intimacy and trust between us. But the thread of Tom remained, a reminder that our love was tested not just by desire, but by the dangers of the past. And that tension, that constant push and pull, only made our connection more intense, more consuming. That'd be why the time we returned home after long walks through the city streets, exhausted and laughing, our nights together became even more passionate, a mix of tenderness and fiery desire. Each embrace, each kiss, each whispered word reminded us of our commitment, not just to survive, but to thrive together. It started subtly at first. A call from an unknown number, a text with no sender, a shadow that seemed to follow us on quiet streets. Lena's eyes, usually bright and playful, held a constant flicker of tension. "I can't believe he's still doing this," she murmured one evening as we sat in my apartment, rain pattering against the windows. "I thought it was over." "It is over," I said firmly, gripping her hand. "But we can't let him scare us." The next night, we walked through the city toward a small, hidden bar Lena had discovered. The streets were nearly empty, fog rolling in from the river. Then I saw him. Tom, lurking near the entrance, smirking as if he owned every shadow. I stepped in front of Lena instinctively. "Leave us alone," I said, voice low and dangerous. "Oh, I'm not leaving," he replied smoothly. "I just wanted to remind you who's really in control." Lena's hand tightened around mine, her pulse quickening. I could feel the fire in her, the same fire that had drawn me to her from the start. We returned to my apartment, and the tension between us spilled over, not into anger, but into passion. That night, we explored each other like never before. Every kiss, every touch, every whispered name was charged with danger and desire. Lena's hands moved over me with urgency, testing my limits, while my lips and hands traced her body with a mix of tenderness and intensity that left us both gasping and trembling. Afterward, lying entwined, we spoke in hushed tones about the threat Tom posed. We made plans, shared fears, and promised each other that no matter what happened, we would face it together. Over the following weeks, we navigated the city with heightened awareness. Our friends became allies. Mark, Lena's co-worker, who offered distraction and support, and Jenna, my childhood friend, who helped us gather information and keep safe. The city became a chessboard, each step calculated, each encounter with Tom a potential threat. Yet, through it all, Lena and I's connection deepened. Our intimacy became a blend of raw passion and emotional reliance. Each encounter, whether in the quiet of my apartment, a hidden hotel room, or a secluded park, was more than desire. It was a reaffirmation of trust, a declaration that no outside force could break us. And beneath the tension, the uncertainty, the shadows of the past, a deeper understanding blossomed. We were no longer just drawn together by desire. We were partners, allies, lovers, bound by shared struggle, shared fear, and an unbreakable connection. The tension between us had grown to a fever pitch. Every touch, every glance, every whispered word carried a weight we could no longer ignore. Lena's presence was magnetic, and yet the constant shadow of Tom made every moment more intense, more desperate. One night, after a long day of walking through the city, avoiding suspicious figures and checking doors twice, we collapsed onto my couch. I held her close, feeling the heat of her body against mine. "You're mine," I whispered, tracing her jawline with my fingers, "and I'm not letting anyone take you from me." Her lips curved into a mischievous smile, a spark of defiance and desire. "Prove it," she murmured, pulling me down into a kiss that left no room for hesitation. What followed was a storm of sensation. Every movement was urgent, every touch electric. Lena's hands roamed over me with a boldness that left me breathless, her kisses igniting a fire I hadn't known existed. Our bodies moved together with a rhythm both chaotic and perfect, a blend of passion, need, and emotional surrender. Between the moments of desire, we whispered secrets, fears, and confessions, unspoken truths about our pasts, our insecurities, and our need for each other. Each revelation only deepened our connection, making our intimacy more than physical. It became a merging of souls, a safe harbor amid chaos. Later, tangled in sheets and sweat, I traced the lines of her body, memorizing every curve, every scar, every whispered moan. She looked at me, eyes shining with trust and need. "You make me feel alive," she said softly. "And you make me feel like I'm home," I replied, pressing my forehead to hers. The city outside might have been full of shadows and threats, but in that apartment, in our embrace, nothing else existed. Not Tom, not fear, just us, our passion, our love, our unbreakable bond. In the days that followed, our life became a delicate balance of love, desire, and vigilance. Every encounter with Tom tested our patience and strategy, but every night together reminded us why it was worth the fight. Our intimacy evolved, blending fiery passion with tender affection, creating a depth of connection that neither of us had ever experienced before. Even in the darkest moments, when the world seemed intent on tearing us apart, our love held firm, a defiance against fear, a sanctuary of desire, and a testament to the unyielding power of connection. It was late evening when Tom made his move. Lena and I had just returned from a quiet dinner, laughter still lingering in the air, when I noticed a car idling across the street. The figure behind the wheel was unmistakable. "He's here," Lena whispered, voice tight with fear and anger. I grabbed her hand, pulling her close. "We face him. Together." Tom stepped out, his smirk calm, calculated. "Thought you could hide from me," he said, his eyes flickering between us. Lena's jaw tightened, but she didn't move away. She trusted me, and I would protect her at all costs. "What do you want?" I asked, stepping in front of her. "Just to chat," he said smoothly, though the threat in his tone was unmistakable. Nothing more. The tension was unbearable. Every muscle in my body screamed, but I kept my focus on protecting Lena, keeping her close, reading every move Tom made. Hours passed in a blur of words, threats thinly veiled as conversation. Tom revealed fragments of his past manipulations, trying to undermine Lena's confidence and test me. But with every sly comment, Lena's eyes met mine, and I knew we were stronger together. Later, back at my apartment, the tension exploded into desire. Lena pressed against me, her body alive with need and relief. "I need you," she whispered, her voice trembling. We moved together with urgency, passion heightened by the danger that had just passed. Every kiss, every touch, every whispered name was a defiance, a claim that we belonged to each other alone. Our bodies intertwined, communicating what words could not: trust, love, and unyielding desire. The night stretched long. Each movement was a dance of passion and emotion, alternating between fiery intensity and tender connection. Lena's laughter, gasps, and whispered confessions filled the apartment, weaving intimacy with vulnerability. When we finally collapsed, exhausted and breathless, I held her close. "We survived," I murmured. "Together." "Yes," she replied, voice soft and steady. "And nothing will ever take us apart." The city outside was quiet, but inside, a storm of love, desire, and trust had solidified. Tom's threat remained, but our bond had reached a point that fear could no longer break. The weeks that followed were tense but decisive. Tom had tried, subtly at first, to unsettle us, but Lena and I had grown stronger. We anticipated his moves, guarded our routines, and leaned on each other in ways that made us nearly untouchable. One night, after a long day of strategy and quiet vigilance, Lena and I walked hand in hand along the riverfront. The city lights reflected on the water, painting everything in gold and silver. She leaned her head on my shoulder. "Do you ever think about how far we've come?" she asked softly. "All the time," I replied. "I've never trusted anyone like I trust you. I've never loved anyone like I love you." She smiled, warmth and mischief mingling in her gaze. We survived him, survived everything together. Back at my apartment, the tension that had defined our lives for months dissolved into something entirely different. Our intimacy that night was slow, deliberate, and electric. Not just desire, but a profound connection of trust and understanding. Every touch was a celebration of survival. Every kiss a reaffirmation of love. Lena traced her fingers along my chest, lips brushing mine softly. "I want this as forever," she whispered. "And you have it," I said, pulling her close. "No one can ever take us apart." Hours passed in a blur of passion, tenderness, and whispered promises. Our bodies moved in perfect harmony, each moment a testament to desire, love, and shared endurance. There were no shadows, no threats, only us, completely vulnerable, completely devoted. The following mornings were quiet but full of life. We cooked breakfast together, argued playfully over the radio, and explored the city as though it were new. Every kiss, every laugh, every brush of hands was a reminder. We had survived storms and shadows, and now we could finally breathe. Months later, in the warmth of our apartment, Lena leaned against me, hair tangled, eyes sparkling. "I never imagined love could feel like this," she said softly. "Neither did I," I admitted, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "But I'm never letting it go." The city outside continued its rhythm, unaware of the battles we had faced and the passion we had survived. Inside, our love burned bright, a force that no shadow could dim, no danger could extinguish. We were alive, entwined, and forever together. And as I held her close, I realized this wasn't just desire, not just passion. This was life, raw and real, messy and beautiful. It was love, the kind that survives fear, that thrives in chaos, and that promises forever. Forever, we belonged to each other. It was a quiet Sunday afternoon. Lena and I were walking through an old neighborhood of Portland, the streets lined with brick buildings, graffiti, and small independent cafes. The air smelled faintly of rain and roasted coffee. She held my hand loosely, her fingers brushing mine with a familiarity that made my chest tighten. "I never told you about the summer before I met Tom," she said, voice soft, almost hesitant. "I was different then. Careless, reckless. I thought I could trust anyone, and I learned the hard way that I couldn't." I squeezed her hand, encouraging her to continue. "I want to know everything." She smiled faintly. "I had a best friend, Sarah. We did everything together. But one night, she betrayed me. It was small, stupid, but it changed me. Made me realize I had to protect myself. That's part of why Tom had so much power over me later. I let him in when I shouldn't have. I listened, absorbing every word. Her past wasn't just shadows. It was the foundation of the woman I loved. The strength, the caution, the fire, they all came from surviving every betrayal. When we returned to my apartment, we lingered in the quiet. I pulled her close, brushing her hair from her face. "You survived all that," I murmured, "and you're still here, with me." She leaned into me, lips brushing my jawline. "Because I trust you, completely." Our intimacy that night was deliberate, slow, and electric. We explored each other with patience and intensity. Every touch a conversation of desire, trust, and understanding. Lena's whispers and moans blended with the rain tapping on the windows, making the room feel like a private world where nothing else existed. The following week brought new allies and new complications. Lena introduced me to her coworker, Mark, a tall, wiry man with quick humor and an uncanny ability to notice things others didn't. He became an unexpected ally in our fight against Tom's lingering presence. "Trust is everything," Mark said one evening as we sat in Lena's tiny apartment, plotting subtle strategies to avoid Tom. "And sometimes, knowing who has your back is as important as knowing who doesn't." Lena nodded, tension still etched on her face. "I've been careful, too careful, but with him back, I can't take any chances." Our nights became a mix of vigilance and escape. Some evenings, we'd venture to the city's quiet corners, hidden parks, small diners, the backstreets of art districts, to feel normal again. Other nights, we stayed in, windows closed, lights dim, bodies tangled in urgent need. Every encounter, every kiss, every touch was heightened by the tension outside, merging passion with fear. One night, after a particularly long day of watching for Tom's movements, Lena pressed herself against me, whispering, "I need you. Now, here, forget everything else." We gave in to desire with abandon, our bodies moving together with an intensity fueled by fear, love, and longing. Every touch was electric, every kiss a rebellion against the threats around us. We explored each other with patience and hunger, intertwining passion with emotional connection in a way that left both of us trembling and exhilarated. Afterwards, tangled in sheets and sweat, Lena rested her head on my chest. "I've never felt this safe, this alive," she whispered. "Neither have I," I replied, tracing circles on her back. "We're stronger together. No one can take this from us." Even with Mark's help and our careful planning, Tom's shadow lingered. Small notes, sudden appearances, and cryptic phone calls reminded us that danger was never far. And yet, each challenge only brought Lena and me closer, deepening the trust and intensity of our love that IT started with subtle provocations. Anonymous texts, a shadow outside Lena's apartment window, a car idling near mine when I returned late from work. Tom was back, And he wasn't just testing us. He was planning point one night. Lena and I sat on the balcony, the city lights flickering below us. She held her knees close, anxiety written on her face. "I hate this," she whispered. "I hate that he's still here, watching, waiting." I pulled her close. "We can't let him control us. Not anymore. Together, we're stronger than him." The next day, we devised a plan. Mark helped us monitor Tom's movements discreetly, while Jenna, my childhood friend, dug through connections and information to anticipate his next move. We treated it like a chess game, every step calculated, every reaction measured. But despite strategy and preparation, the tension bled into every moment we had together. Our intimacy became more than desire. It was rebellion. That night, after a long day of planning, Lena pressed herself against me, her body seeking reassurance and passion. "You're mine," I whispered, hands roaming over her curves, lips tracing her jaw and neck. "And you're mine," she replied, moaning softly as we melted into each other. Every movement was urgent, a mix of fear, desire, and affirmation. Her hands traced my back and chest, nails grazing skin in a way that sent shivers through me. Every kiss, every whispered name, every touch became a declaration. We survive, we fight, and we belong together. Hours passed in a blur of passion and intimacy. Between moans and whispered confessions, we shared fears, laughter, and secrets. Each embrace solidified trust. Each kiss reaffirmed love. Our bodies moved together like a storm, raw and tender at once, passion tempered by care, desire interlaced with emotional depth. Afterwards, exhausted and entwined, Lena whispered, "I don't care what he does. I am staying with you, and I'll always keep you safe," I replied, holding her close. No one can touch us. The city slept around us, oblivious to the battles we'd fought and the passion we'd survived. But in our apartment, love, desire, and determination burned brighter than any thread outside. It was a rainy night when Tom finally acted. Lena and I had just returned from a late dinner, soaked from the sudden downpour, when we noticed a shadow moving near my apartment building. My heart thumped in my chest, adrenaline spiking instantly. "He's here," Lena whispered, clutching my arm that I nodded, steeling myself. "Stay behind me." Tom stepped into the dim light, his smirk calm, eyes sharp and calculating. "I warned you," he said, voice low. "You can't hide forever." I moved instinctively, standing in front of Lena. "We're not afraid of you," I said, voice firm. "Leave. Now." He laughed softly, a dangerous sound that made the rain feel colder. "Or what?" Lena stepped forward, surprising both of us. "Or you lose," she said, her voice steady despite the tension. "We're not the same people you controlled before." The confrontation didn't explode into violence. Tom wasn't reckless. Instead, he realized he had underestimated us. Our trust, our unity, and our unyielding love made him powerless. With a final glare, he disappeared into the rain-soaked night, leaving behind only silence and the faint echo of his threats. Back inside, Lena collapsed into my arms, shivering from adrenaline and rain. "It's over," I whispered, pressing kisses into her hair. "It feels like it," she replied, lifting her face to mine. That night, our intimacy became a celebration of survival, desire, and trust. Every kiss, every touch, every movement was imbued with the intensity of the battles we had fought and the passion we had shared. Lena's hands and lips explored me with urgency and tenderness. Each moan and gasp a declaration of love and ownership. I responded with equal fervor, tracing her curves, memorizing every contour, every shiver, every whispered name. Hours later, we lay entwined, bodies slick with sweat and hearts racing. "I've never felt this alive," Lena murmured, resting her head against my chest. "Neither have I said, running my fingers through her hair. "And nothing will ever take this from us." The rain outside finally eased, and the city returned to its quiet rhythm. But inside, a storm of desire, love, and relief raged, binding us together more deeply than ever. We had survived threats, fear, and secrets, and emerged unbroken, fiercely connected, and completely devoted to each other. For the first time, I realized that love like ours wasn't just about passion or desire. It was about trust, survival, and choosing each other every single day. And we would keep choosing each other forever. The weeks after Tom disappeared felt surreal. Portland seemed quieter somehow, calmer, as if the city itself recognized that the storm had passed. Lena and I moved through our days with a new freedom, walking hand in hand, exploring corners of the city we hadn't noticed before, and savoring moments of normalcy. One lazy Sunday, we wandered through a small art district, colorful murals lining the brick walls. Lena laughed at a street performer's awkward juggling, her hand in mine. The sound of her laughter was intoxicating, a reminder that joy was possible even after fear. Later, back at my apartment, the intimacy between us shifted. It wasn't just about passion, it was comfort, closeness, and trust. Lena pressed herself against me, running her fingers over my chest, tracing lines only she knew. "I love how safe I feel with you," she whispered. I cupped her face, lips brushing hers. "You make me feel alive," I said, voice low. "And nothing will ever take that from us." We fell into each other slowly, exploring every touch, every kiss, every shiver with tenderness and fire. Each movement was deliberate, a merging of desire and emotional intimacy. For hours, we surrendered completely, bodies intertwined, hearts racing, minds fully present in the moment in the quiet that followed. Lying tangled in sheets, Lena traced circles on my chest. "Do you remember the first night we really let ourselves feel everything?" she asked, eyes glistening. I smiled, pressing my forehead to hers. "Every moment. And I'd relive it 1,000 times if I had to, as long as it's with you." Days turned into weeks. We cooked together, danced in the kitchen, argued playfully over music, and spent late nights talking about dreams and fears. Our bond deepened, blending romance, passion, and a partnership forged in struggle. One evening, as the city lights shimmered through the windows, Lena rested her head on my shoulder. "I never thought life could feel like this," she said softly. "But with you it does. Every day. And it always will," I replied, kissing her temple. "Forever us." In the safety of our apartment, the shadow of the past finally faded. We were alive, in love, and unstoppable, a force stronger than fear, desire, or any challenge the world could throw at us. Life after Tom had a rhythm of its own. Lena and I found joy in the little things, walking down cobblestone streets, holding hands through crowded markets, and stealing kisses in quiet corners of the city. Portland's rainy afternoons became our sanctuary. One evening, we wandered into a tiny bookshop tucked between two cafes. Lena ran her fingers along the spines, pulling out volumes she loved as a child. "I used to dream about escaping into these worlds," she said softly. "And now, I feel like I'm living my own story." I watched her, heart swelling. "And I get to be in it," I said, brushing a strand of hair from her face. Later, back at my apartment, the intimacy between us was gentle yet electric. Lena pressed herself against me, tracing my chest with delicate fingers, her lips brushing mine in soft, teasing kisses. Every touch was a reminder of survival, trust, and the deep love we shared. "I love how every day with you feels like the first time," she murmured, her voice trembling slightly. I smiled, capturing her lips in a long, slow kiss. "And I'll keep making it feel that way, every day." We spent hours together, exploring each other with a mix of tenderness and urgency. Each kiss, each touch, each whispered confession deepened our connection. Our intimacy became both passion and solace, a blend of fire and safety. Flashbacks occasionally surfaced, memories of fear, of past lovers, of moments when we thought we might lose each other. But every time, they only reminded us how strong we had become together. Lena's scars, mine, the battles we'd faced, they were part of our story, part of why our love was so fierce. As night fell, we lay tangled in each other's arms, the city outside quiet and soft. I never imagined life could feel this full, Lena whispered. Me neither, I said, pressing a kiss to her forehead. But I can't imagine it with anyone else. And for the first time in months, we allowed ourselves to breathe completely, safe, loved, and alive in every sense. One rainy afternoon, Lena and I sat on the balcony of my apartment, steaming mugs of coffee in our hands. The city below was a blur of gray and neon reflections. I was thinking about high school, Lena said softly, staring at the rain. I wasn't always this strong. I had a lot of mistakes, regrets. I reached for her hand. Tell me, every part of you matters to me. She smiled faintly. I had a boyfriend once, Jason. I thought he was my world, but he left me for someone else. I learned early that people can hurt you, and sometimes you have to protect yourself before anyone else can. Her honesty made my chest tighten. Every scar, every memory, every flaw was part of her, and I loved it all. I brushed my thumb over her knuckles, pulling her close. That's why we work, I whispered, because we survived our pasts, and we found each other. Later that night, our intimacy carried a weight of shared history and deep trust. Lena pressed herself against me, our movements slow and deliberate, exploring not just desire but connection. Every kiss, every caress, every whispered word deepened our bond. I want to remember this forever, she murmured, her lips brushing my collarbone. And I will, I said, tracing her back with gentle urgency. Every touch, every sound, every moment is ours. Hours passed in a blur of passion and tenderness, a mix of fire and safety, as if the city outside didn't exist. We surrendered completely to each other, merging desire with love, letting every fear, every shadow, every memory fall away in the heat of our connection. Afterward, lying tangled in sheets, we shared stories of past loves, mistakes, and dreams for the future. Each confession, each laugh, each touch reinforced our trust and passion. Lena rested her head on my chest, breathing slowly. I've never felt this alive, she whispered. Neither have I replied, pressing a kiss to her hair. And I never want to stop feeling this with you.